So now we've gone through the templates. Let's look at actually creating a site from one of the templates. We're going to go through the process here to kind of show you what we've got and to show you what your out-of-the-box options are. After we do this, the next section will actually be going through and looking at the templates themselves and how we actually find the content in there. We'll do a quick look at each one of them, but overall we're just going to show you how you should see what's in the template and do a quick review when you're working with that. So to begin with, this is my Create Site collection. You can see it's actually up underneath the Central Administration area. So I actually have to have rights to do this. Very often a SharePoint administrator will create these for you, but for you to know what to give them, we're walking through this, and you may have rights to do this for certain areas, so you may get access to this, or even one of the things we've done is actually create a small app that actually goes through this interface if you have permissions to create the new sites. So to begin with, we'll go through, we've got our web application, which is just my dev server name. I've got it off on 8181 if you're curious, just to get it off of 80 because I've got another project going on there. If there were other applications I could do, I could pull it down, change the web application, I could move over to there. Right now we're going to stick with this web application, but know that it's available. If you have the rights, you could even create a new web application. These are all basically areas on the IIS server that your SharePoint locations can show up as. Again, if you're coming from the IT Pro side or the developer side, this will probably make sense. If you're working with the business level, don't worry so much about this. You'll generally have somebody supporting you putting it into place. Our title for this one will be, because we're just going through and creating a demo site, let me give it the description. Note when I'm typing, I had my my spell checking popped up, created my SharePoint capitalization, and went on through. So it'll actually help you as you're going through here. Now our website address is actually underneath the web application itself. So what we'll do is here's our URL. You've again got my server name and my port 8181, and then you notice I'm up underneath a directory called Sites. We can actually create a number of these locations where sites go into. You may have seen these before as projects. You may have seen My Sites, which is a special location to put SharePoint sites up underneath. You may have teams, you may have departments, you may have all kinds of things. So this can actually be fairly customizable. Right now I just have sites. I haven't assigned for anything else. But if there's a way for me to categorize or put these sites in a location where I want them, I can actually roll that into place and have it done. But I'll just go with my demo theme here. And then I've got my select experience versions. If you're not used to 2013, this will be something new. 2013 actually has the ability to have SharePoint 2010 and 2013 experiences run side by side. So if you've got a situation where maybe your users haven't been trained, you've got the infrastructure available, but you still need to keep a common look and feel, or maybe you've got a web part or a plugin that really needs that SharePoint 2010 experience, you can do that. If you don't have a good reason, though, highly recommend you leave it at 2013. It makes it a lot more easier for your users to work with. It pushes a lot more load down onto the web browser so your servers don't get as overloaded, and it's just a nice little way to go. So now we've got down to our templates themselves, and you see we've got our team site, blog, project site, and community site. So we've got all of those in place. We also have our developer site, which I didn't mention as we're going through the templates. If you're a software developer, you may have seen this before, especially if you went through the SharePoint developer course. We went through this pretty deep. But basically, the developer site is built for SharePoint development projects. So it actually gathers things up to make SharePoint web apps. And you actually can go in there, and it's built to work on the task list, to actually figure out what's going on, to actually do deployments, all those kind of things. So it's very much focused on doing SharePoint development. Let's go to the tabs here. You can see we've actually got our separate tabs. Enterprise, we've got our Document Center, our e-discovery center, which I mentioned is where your lawyers like to make sure that documents don't roll off. Record Center, Business Intelligence Center, Enterprise Search Center, community portal, basic search center, Visio process repository. Again, I did not mention the MiteSite host. This is something that really you're not going to be creating a lot of stuff with. It's a personal site collection that gets created for each user. If you got it activated, it's got some interesting things to it, so we won't cover it here. If you're managing it, and if you're doing a site management for My Sites, probably need to look at the SharePoint Administrator course. We've got our publishing, which is our publisher portal, Enterprise Wiki, and the product catalog, which I didn't mention, but it's a place where you can actually have products for the company. If you've got something that you want to be able to have, here's what your company's products are and where it needs to go to, where you actually want your users to be able to take a look at that information. It's something that's available there. By the way, as I flip through these, you can see that each time I select one, it gives me a description. So I can actually come through and get a quick little description of what's going on to kind of jog my memory. And then we've got custom, which we can, right now we don't have any custom templates, so I can say select a template later. Basically, when I go to the site, I can create it without a template at all, and when I go to the site, it will ask me for the template I want to use. But for right now, let's go back to collaboration. Let's just do a simple project site. And now we come down to some of the rights management. All SharePoint locations have to have at least one site collection administrator. I'm going to use my administrator account here. Note I just type in the name, and then go over here to check. Always want to check the names, and note it actually puts in the correct domain, which is my local account here. You can put in as many as you want to, separated by a semicolon, and since it was already there, it rolled those two together. So if you end up with a long list that has duplicated names, SharePoint will check on that as well and make sure that you've got just the users you need. Now, we don't require a secondary site collection for the server that I've got set up. For many organizations, you do want that. This is to make sure that if your primary administrator leaves the company, is no longer available, maybe out on vacation, there's a backup for that person. So if you do set that up so that you need a secondary administrator, you'll need to enter that in here before you actually can create the site. And then we've got our quota templates, which I don't have a template set up for this, but if we had one, I could actually choose which template I should use. No quota is nice, and we can use whatever we want to. We can actually have multiple quotas in here, and I could actually have set it up so that you have to choose a quota as an administrator. So note that that's in there. Normally, you just kind of use the default on this one. If you can change the quota at this point, then if you choose the wrong one here, then there are options to change it later on. And so now we go through, we've entered in just the basic information we need, and we'll do an OK and start creating this site. It'll take just a second when we get our SharePoint working on it. If you're used to SharePoint 2013, you're used to seeing working on it a lot. And it's going to go out, it's going to create the database files that we need, actually set everything up in all the different templates. And as you can see, it's gone through and created my demo site. So I'm going to go through, and we're going to go to our demo site. Note I could have gone back to create another one, but I didn't. I chose not to. And so we've got our demo site here. While we're on here, I'm going to go through and show you what to look for any general site. And then once we get through this, then I'll walk through each of the different templates that we can create, show you where we can find all the different SharePoint sites that are created, and then give you a quick overview of each of those templates as you go through. I've got those pre-created, so we don't have to create each one of them, but we can actually you can actually see what's going on there. As you can see with the project summary, we start with the task list. We've got our different lists here. We've got to get started with your site. And note that even though the get started with your site will be on all of your templates, or most of the templates out of the box, each one will have something a little bit different. So as we go through the templates, take a look at that. So we can actually go through, get the right people in place, set up the timeline that we've got up here so we can actually edit the task list, add new list libraries and other apps. So we can actually take this and expand it right off this base. We can actually create a new style, look and feel, and we've got our logo and graphics that we can put into place. So those are the quick little pieces that we see of the base install. We've got our news feed that I can come in and say, and we can actually post this. Note that I was talking about the blog template. This is very blog-like, that you can actually have the posts in most of the SharePoint templates itself. So you can actually see who posted it, what the message was, when it was. You can like it, you can reply, and copy the conversation or lock the conversation. So we've got some different ways to get that information right off the bat. New documents. Later in the course, we'll actually talk about doing templates for those new documents, so you can actually have things based off of it, but you can actually see that the documents library has nothing in there. We've got, again, our different pieces. So let's look at the site contents itself and see what was created just right off. And you can see we've got our calendar, our form templates, our document library, our microfeed, which has my comments there, our site assets, which we may need for more logos, for all those kind of pieces. We've got our tasks that we talked about, that you saw, being able to edit that timeline and figuring out what needs to be done. And then our style library, where we've got some default styles in there. Let's go in and take a look. Got some different pieces for media library, media player. This is just something that we kind of come into place, but if we wanted to do some custom styles, it makes it very easy to just go in there and put it into place. Note that where we're going as an administrator, most users will not have access to the styles because, well, you want them to kind of have a consistent look and feel. You can actually see any site workflows. There's nothing in the recycle bin. This site contents is a very easy place to go in and take a look. Oh, and this is where you can actually create a new sub-site under your site. Again, we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, but note that a sub-site is a partial capabilities of the full site collection. There are some things where we'll see with just in the site, and there's some things we'll see in the sub-site. Easiest way to kind of walk into that is, let's take a look at the settings themselves. There's a couple places you can go to settings. We've got settings up at the top. We've got settings right there on the content, and then we've got our full site settings that we have in the template itself. You can see we have permissions, designer galleries, site administration. Here we actually have this site administration, which is think of it as the sub-site at the top of your site collection. Or you can actually look over at the Site Collection Administrator, this is the information that you need to manage not just this site, but all of the sub-sites. So it's a little bit odd thinking of it in that way. If you're a developer, you're used to seeing a SP site, which is kind of what happens over here with the Site Collection Administration. And then you've got the SP Web, which is the site administration. These are separate inside of the SharePoint database, but if you think about it as you've got a kind of overview administration actions that handles all of the pages on your site collection, your SharePoint site, and then you've got certain things that just work with the top pages on each of your sites and subsites. That's probably the easiest way to look at it. Later on, we're going to actually dive into these a little bit more carefully and show you how every one of them works. But for right now, let's actually pop back up. And I was going to make sure you saw you can actually do give access to the site by share. You can actually follow the site, which makes it easier to find. It actually pops it back to you on your My Site. And then we've got the ability to go into focus on content. And I will do that just one moment, because this is one thing that you probably, as an administrator, you want to show to your users. You note that this removes all of the navigation around the outside. So whereas this, we actually have some navigation. We drop over here and our search goes away across the top and our navigation goes across the side. So this is just the information you need. Sorry about that. The charms bar pops up every once in a while. So we can actually go through and do our edit links. Again, all this is what we're going to do in just a few minutes once we get to the part about customizing the templates. So this is kind of our first one, and you've kind of seen where we can find out where all the information is for each of them. Let's go to our site collection list, and you can see that these are all of the templates that we've gone through and created, just to pre-position them so that we actually have them when we go through this. So let's actually come in here, and we'll need to actually do the copy and paste. Pop over and go to my blog site to begin with, and I've given it too many sites. and now we've got our blog template. You can see that this is very, very similar. There's a lot of these templates that aren't that different. We basically have our news feed, which is our blog template. We can do the share and all the rest of it. So this looks very, very familiar. We can actually go take a look at our contents, and you can see here we've got our documents and our microfeeds, our main thing that we're looking at. So the rest of the items that we had from our project template aren't there anymore. You can actually come through and see what we've got, and it's just got a couple of items on the template that don't show up because they're just kind of prepping. If we wanted to go in this template and customize it to have some pre-positioned notifications on the microfeed, we could do that as well, and again we're going to do that when we get to the customization section.